Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. So today I have a Patriot build, and I haven't played a Patriot deck in a very long time, but this one piqued my interest. This was written up on Marvel Snap Zone by a user named Kingfisher, and so I'll leave a link to his original write-up in the description below. He used this list to get from 80 to infinite this season with a 58% win rate. And in my preliminary testing, I did 27 games, and out of those 27 games, I had about a 63% win rate, which of course mine is a smaller sample size, but it is still incredibly promising for that early on. And this list piqued my interest because it does run Super Skrull. Super Skrull is, by all means, a tech card. He's not going to be useful in every single game, but the games that he is useful in, he is going to pretty much single-handedly win you a lane or multiple lanes if you copy it with Mystique. Otherwise, it is a pretty standard Patriot list. If you don't have Super Skrull, that's okay. You can take that out for Kazar, and it should do just about the same thing. But since we are in a leech meta, we don't want to hold our resources until the end of the game. We want to play them onto curve, even though it is really transparent, it is really telegraphed what kind of deck we're running, but we will have the resources to drop them in a way that if they have a rogue or an enchantress, it might not brick our entire game plan because we have so much power and so many versatile options that we can use. And then if you don't get leeched and you need that extra power push at the end, you always have Ultron to lean back on. Or if you don't, you've already developed a pretty good board, you can always double down on your ongoing abilities with something like Onslaught. And so overall, it feels very, very good. It feels very versatile. We're going to go ahead and jump over into a couple of games. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, first up we have Dr. Whale PhD. The first location is Icebox. It hits our Misty Knight, which is okay. Right now we don't have another 1 or 2 cost cards, so we'll be able to play that on to turn 2. The second location is Morag, and we do have Ultron in our hand. We also have Patriot into Mystique into an Ultron. As long as it doesn't get leeched, then we should be perfectly fine here. I'm going to go ahead and throw Misty Knight onto the board. It does let them know exactly what we're running here, but I think that's okay. I think for all intents and purposes, most of the time we're not going to run into Enchantress counters or anything that is going to disrupt this incredibly heavily. And so I'm okay with letting them know exactly what our game plan is. I'm going to go ahead and snap. They could end up getting us, but I'm going to split up our Patriot and our Mystique just in case they do have an Enchantress. I can only hit one of the two, and then I can decide where we need to push our power after that. And so they do a Yellow Jacket and a Rhino to destroy the Morag location, which is very interesting. The Yellow Jacket is not a 3-power card. This could be a Cerebro and Valkyrie deck. And the one benefit that we have versus Cerebro and Valkyrie is that we have powers that will continue to push extra power even if they get set to 3. And so the Patriot will be able to push our power level up higher than what the base is. And so they do have Yellow Jacket, they have Adam Warlock. I can only assume that they're going to lean in towards maybe a Cerebro 3 and that they're going to look to fix this lane with Valkyrie towards the end of the game. Now that's just a gut feeling. I don't know for sure that that's how this is going to play out. I am going to play Blue Marvel and Wasp into Monster Metropolis. We are going to try to angle it so that they don't draw into those additional resources if we can help it. And then on the last turn, we can drop our Ultron. Unless they do some kind of strong ongoing ability, then maybe we angle in towards Super Skrull instead. But the magic does still support a Cerebro 3. And so Blue Marvel is not going to allow them to correct this lane with Valkyrie. That puts them in a rather difficult position. We could do Onslaught to double down on the Blue Marvel and the Mystique. I think we just do Onslaught over here though. And then that will allow us to decide if we want Ultron here or here. And then this lane will be a very formidable lane. This one will be a very formidable lane, just depending on where we decide to drop it. And so we will lean into the Onslaught play this turn. If for some reason they change this lane back, then I think we still have the win in the left and the right. So I don't think they're trying to sneakily make us think that there's going to be a turn 7 and then quickly change it on us. So they do play 2 cards into this lane. If they end up doing maybe a Professor X, no, so it is a Bast and a Valkyrie. They have their Cerebro 3 set up. If they end up doing Cerebro and Mystique here, it's going to be plus 16 to this lane. Now Bast did set Cerebro and Mystique both to 3, so they will get impacted as well. And so if we do Ultron here, our Ultron robots are going to be 8 power each. So this is going to be 8, 16, 24 power. And so if they do both here, Maxed out lane is going to be 28 power. And so I think our Ultron and our bots will beat the double Cerebro. I think. We are going to... We're going to hope. We're going to lean in. We're going to hope. The Cerebro and the Mystique. Actually, I don't think we beat the Monster Metropolis. Yeah, we do. We beat the Monster Metropolis lane by 1, right? And so they do have the Wasp, the Cerebro, and the Mystique. That is going to make it a very, very close game. I think we come out on top in the Limbo and the Monster Metropolis location, but it comes down to be very, very close. 1 point differential, very, very close. What a wild game. The Cerebro Valkyrie deck can be pretty good, and it can be pretty scary, but it does sometimes fall flat against decks that can push some additional power into those lanes after being right-sized to 3. And so what a wild first game. Let's go ahead and jump over into the next one, see if we can keep it going. All right, next up we have AA Manbo, and we end up losing our Misty Knight. They lose their Hobgoblin. And so Hobgoblin could be a ramp deck, could be an Electro ramp, it could be a Galactus deck that uses a Shuri and a Hobgoblin to really clog up our board. We will keep an eye on how the rest of their game develops. Those are a couple of the ideas that I get based off of that first card that I saw. And they of course know that we are going to be a Patriot deck, probably a Patriot Ultron, but we have several ways to push that power, and it's oftentimes pretty surprising how much power we can actually push onto the board. And so because a Patriot list is so transparent, we're going to lean in. We're going to go ahead and we just play our power outright where we can. And it does look like they are going with the Ultron. And so, not the Ultron, the Galactus. They used a wave. I would anticipate a Galactus here just because they can't play one into Morag. And so I'm going to do the Patriot, Blue Marvel, and then I don't know. I think we probably lose. We can't stack up tall. Oh, it's a Doctor Doom. Not what I was expecting. And so we can't stack up tall against a Galactus deck, but a Doctor Doom deck, I think we can. I'm going to go ahead and do our Wasp. That will allow us to do our Brood over into Morag. Most of the time we hold Wasp until the very last turn, just as kind of that surprise play. I think we do, just in case we get leeched. I want to make sure that we have power in Morag just in case. Now, they didn't use leech last turn, so I assume they probably wouldn't do it this turn. And if they did, we already have the Patriot, we already have the Blue Marvel, and so our cards would get buffed up anyways. And so we do get the 1 cube retreat. Let's go ahead and jump over into the next one and see if we can keep it going. All right, next up we have Play a Boss, and the first location is Onslaught Citadel. So we do have Mr. Sinister, we have Blue Marvel, Onslaught, Mystique, oh, and this is the mirror match. If we can draw into our Super Skrull, this is what Super Skrull is in this deck for, is to allow us to win our mirror matches. And so if they have a Patriot in Onslaught Citadel, we can copy that with our Super Skrull. Now we won't be able to play it into the Onslaught Citadel, but we will be able to play the Super Skrull into a Mystique in the Onslaught Citadel to find that increased upside. Now I am going to skip on turn 3. If we don't draw into our Patriot or Super Skrull, then on turn 4, we're going to do something like a Misty Knight and a Brood into Morag. That way we can push some early power there. We don't have to rely on an Ultron to find our win condition. And so they are developing their board pretty fast. They have quite a bit of power out on the board. We are going to go ahead and play our Misty Knight into Onslaught Citadel, and then our Brood into Morag. Next turn we can do a Blue Marvel. We are still hoping we can't do a Blue Marvel into the Onslaught Citadel, though, is the only issue. We do draw into the Super Skrull, which is beautiful, but it also comes at a little bit of a risk. If Grand Central pulls into our Mystique, then that is going to cap out this location. We won't get the double effect of the Mystique in the Onslaught Citadel, and so we might not have a great win condition. If we pull into our Ultron, we have 2 ways to absolutely whiff this location. Now, the higher rolls are our Onslaught, which would double the Super Skrull and give us 2 times whatever ongoing abilities they have, or the Blue Marvel, which would kind of elevate our power just a little bit further. But this is a scary situation. We have a 50-50 shot of whether the card it pulls into is good or whether it pulls into a bad one. And so we will just see. That's all we can do is just wait and hope. Oh, no, it's the Mystique. That is awful. Oh, no, that is not what we wanted to see, guys. So they are actually capped out on the last turn, so we can... Ooh, and then we copy their blue Marvel as well twice, and so we actually have the win condition. That is what Super Skrull is here for, is to allow us that flexibility. Now, I do wish we would have been able to have the Mystique over here to just really blow it out of the water, but this forced them into a capped out location, a capped out game where they didn't have any answers, where they weren't able to play any more cards, and we had the advantage already. And so the Super Skrull comes in absolutely clutch and allows us to find the win condition. That is what he is here for. That is why I enjoy him in this deck, is he's very situational. But whenever he works and whenever you run into a match that is beneficial for him, he becomes your primary win condition, and the rest of your game could go absolutely terribly, and then he comes in and just wins it for you. So let's go ahead and jump over into the next one. All right, next up we have 13 Xers, and the first location is Hellfire Club, so we're not going to be able to play our Misty Knight, but just about anything else we can play into that location. Iceman does hit our Wasp, so we're not going to be able to play our Wasp over there either. And the second location is Morag, so we will have to play 2 cards to be able to push cards into that location, but we do have Ultron. So if we don't have a way to push cards in there into that lane otherwise, then we have Ultron to push 4 Ultron bots into that location, which ideally they'll be buffed up by that point. So we do get a Dr. Doom. So they're running a Dr. Doom. It can go wide. How do we play this one? Let's go ahead and play Cyclops into Hellfire Club. We will most likely do, if we draw into Ultron, that is our Patriot. I meant Patriot, but I said Ultron. We already have Ultron. We're going to go ahead and play Patriot into the Daily Bugle, and I'm going to go ahead and angle our Misty Knight into Morag just because we can. It will be a slight buff over an Ultron bot, but next turn we will probably do something like a Blue Marvel. I'm actually going to reorder... Oh no, I can't. I was going to go ahead and reorder the order of these cards so that if we draw into Mystique for some reason next turn, that would be fine. It feels bad. It feels really bad, but I'm going to go ahead and we're going to play Misty Knight and Patriot just in case we draw into Mystique. Mystique is going to be our high roll, and so we have a 1 out of 5 shot. I don't want to shut that door off completely. It would have been good to push some power into Morag, but Super Skrull, looking at what we've seen so far from their list, I don't think they're going to have any kind of ongoing ability, so I don't think Super Skrull is going to serve us very well here. We actually had one matchup where it was a mirror match, and he was going to be phenomenal. The second location turned out to be District X, and then all of a sudden that goes out the window. And so what could have been, I want to get at least one game where he is showcased and his power is shown, but this is not going to be that game. And so they do use a Captain Marvel that's going to be able to act as a rover across the board. They do have the Lockjaw to rotate any kind of card that they put into Hellfire Club. We are going to lean into our Ultron. The bots are going to be 4 power each. So it's going to be 4, 8, 16 power in Morag. It's going to push a little bit of power into the Daily Bugle, and then of course the 8 power of the Ultron bot. I'm not going to snap here just because they could push an insane amount of power. I don't know. They do have the Doom bot. I think if we snap, they would retreat. So I'm actually going to just hope that they stick it out and we can get 1 additional cube versus just winning 1 cube from the concede. Sometimes you have to gauge what your opponent might do if you snap, and then if they stick it out or if they snap back, we don't know their deck well enough. All we know is that they have a Dr. Doom. They might end up still beating us. A leader play, I don't think does it. It's going to clog up their board. An arrow play won't trigger because we have initiative, and so they won't have room to trigger. And so we will just clog the board and then kind of go from there. A Killmonger, however, would be devastating. So they do use Dr. Doom, and then that rotates out of Hellfire Club into a Devil Dino, which is huge. And then M'Baku comes out of nowhere to try to find the win condition, but it is not quite enough. And so because Captain Marvel was not able to find a win condition here or here, we do stick it out and win this game. Let's go ahead and jump over into the next one. All right, next up we have Mai, and the first location is Morag. We don't have Ultron in our hand just yet, but we have several low-cost cards in this list. Killing is actually pretty good for us. That's going to lock down this lane as long as Mai is not running a control deck, something that uses the Luke Cage. We're actually going to probably hold our Super Skrull for just a little bit, because I imagine that they are going to use a hazmat to reduce the power of our cards, and then our Super Skrull is going to come in. It will copy Luke Cage's ongoing ability, and then their hazmat or their quadruple trigger hazmat is no longer going to have an impact or any effect. We are going to throw Wasp into Kiln and then Patriot into Morag. My reasoning for that being, it's a little bit harder for them to angle an Enchantress over into that lane. It's harder for them to angle a Rogue over there. So he's a little bit safer in Morag rather than Kiln. The only downside is it also allows us to play him second rather than having to play him first into a Wasp. And so if we draw into Mystique here, we can actually play that into Murder World. It's like, we'll take it. I mean, we will absolutely take it. I'm going to go ahead and try and snap. If they retreat, that's okay. But I think by having both our Patriot and our Mystique split up, we have the Super Skrull to adopt and absorb the Luke Cage ability, so we're not going to have our power reduced. I think it gives us a very good shot at finding our win in this game. Now, they may have pushed an Enchantress over, no, it's an Electra, to try to kill a 1-cost card, but then it is a Rogue. And little do they know, we have the Super Skrull, so that actually turns our Patriot into an abilityless card. And so now he gets buffed up by Mystique. He's going to get buffed up by the Super Skrull as well, because that will absorb their Rogue's ability. They don't realize that we have that kind of range. And so we're actually going to hold the Super Skrull until the very last turn, just to try to maybe influence them into a few more cubes for us. The Luke Cage is stuck into Kiln now, but our Super Skrull is going to come down on the last turn. And so even if they negatively impact our cards, if they hit it with a Valkyrie and it reduces its power, ooh, so the Enchantress now comes down. Wow, so that is a Rogue into an Enchantress. So we actually right now don't have any buff cards. I do wish this was the Mr. Sinister instead of the Brood, so we could play both here. But I think Super Skrull is going to be enough. They don't have a very good power push. We are going to absorb their Patriot ability from Rogue with our Super Skrull. We would absorb Luke Cage. I'm guessing they didn't draw into the pieces they needed to reduce the power that we had here and here. And so they were going to have to play here, and we already had the win in both of these lanes. I think they extended a little bit too far trying to counter the Patriot, and as a result, we were able to get the 2-cube retreat. Let's go ahead and jump over into the next one. Super Skrull should have locked that game down for us. Even if they had a decent play line, it probably could have got us 4 or 8 cubes, but since the opponent didn't draw into their cards or their key resources, they ended up retreating, unfortunately. Let's jump over into the next one. All right, next up we have Like a Needle, and the first location is Throne Room. We probably don't stand a chance at being the highest power card, but maybe if we have the most cards there, then maybe we can outpower one card that they have that was doubled. The second location is Triskelion, which gives us a lot of kind of hublub cards. We're going to go ahead and play our 0 into a turn 3 Polaris. 0 is going to take away, it's going to make it a vanilla card, so it will work with our Patriot. They use an invisible one, so they could be running so many different things that they want to angle behind this card. Now, unfortunately, we did use 0. We're not going to be able to use our Patriot on 3. We're going to have to curve into a Patriot on 4, a Mystique on 5, and then maybe we look for an Ultron play on 6. We do have Rogue. We could use that to steal the Invisible Woman and force them into revealing their cards a turn early, just to get a feel for what they have. But I'm not sure if that's worth it or not. Sometimes we don't necessarily want the answer that we're going to get. You know, they say curiosity killed the cat. We're going to go ahead and use our Rogue. Maybe we'll reveal something that they don't want revealed quite yet. But we'll see. The Kingpin. The Kingpin into the Polaris and probably an arrow or something else in the Kingpin lane was going to be kind of sneaky. Let's go ahead and do our Mr. Sinister into our Patriot in the Triskelion lane. If we draw into Ultron, we can hide it behind the Starlight Citadel. I don't know. I don't know that we have enough reach or power to win, but we are sure gonna try our best. So since they haven't snapped, I'm not really going to push our advantage any, I am going to play Mystique to copy Patriot, and then we're going to hide a Shocker into the Starlight Citadel. That way it protects us from an arrow play. I assume that they have an arrow that's going to come down. And so we want to make sure that this lane is capped out so that they can't pull that card over and end up getting it destroyed. So there is the arrow, which is perfectly fine. We max out that lane so we don't have to worry about it. And then we actually do end up finding our win. Had Captain Marvel moved over into the throne room, she would have become 12 power, but we would have beaten her by 2 because of the extra Mr. Sinister, and then that would have left them defenseless here. That could have been a very nasty surprise combo on the last turn, but luckily we were able to utilize 3 of the cards that we got from the Triskelion, find a way to put ourselves in a winning position. Alright, next up we have Cadrock, and the first location is Mindscape, so that's not great. That means we want to play and develop our board as early as possible, get as many buff cards out onto the board as we can. That way, whenever we give them our cards at the end of the game, it's not as big of a deal. They're not going to have as many good resources to utilize. And we want to have enough power that we can make sure to position ourselves in a way to win going into that last turn. So they use an armor, it turns into Shadowland. I'm going to go ahead and throw our Cyclops over there. We're still digging and looking for our Patriot. If we can get Patriot, we can do a Patriot on 4 into a Mystique and a Shocker on 5. And then that will allow us to angle into the last turn of the game. Ooh, they use an Electro to ramp into maybe a Galactus. Galactus is one of the few decks that I am really, really afraid of with this list. Now we know that they can't use Galactus this turn. I'm going to go ahead and play our Patriot into Shadowland. Next turn we will play our Mystique and our Shocker. Depending on what they play here, it is a leech. So fortunately for us, we do get the Patriot out onto the board first. And so we will be able to play our ability list cards and they'll get buffed up by Patriot. Now it would have been better had we been able to copy the Patriot with the Mystique. But without it is okay. We don't have Ultron yet. And so we have a 1 out of 4 shot of drawing into it next turn. And we're going to send them some mediocre cards. We're going to send them a Onslaught, a Blue Marvel, and a Super Skrull. They could copy our Patriot abilities, but those aren't going to do them much good besides their negative ninja. If they use a leader here, then that's going to copy the Mystique and the Shocker, which aren't great either. So they do use leader instead of sending it our way, which doesn't give them a huge benefit. Going into this last turn, we have the... Oh my gosh. They also send us Odin, so we don't have to worry about them top decking into Odin. We're going to go ahead and play our Ultron into Shadowland. That will send a Ultron bot here, and then 3 of them here. If we didn't think they would retreat, I would go ahead and snap, but we are going to just angle our Ultron. We'll see if they snap. If they do, then we'll snap right back, because an arrow play wouldn't necessarily do it. Because we were able to get our buff card out before the leech came down, it just wasn't early enough or impactful enough to make sure that we didn't have a way to win. Now, the reason I think leech into leader on 5 and then 6 is so strong is because you don't really have a turn to react. And then if you do, the leader can come down and copy it. Otherwise, you give the opponent a couple of turns to kind of recover. And so a turn 4 leech I don't think is as impactful. It can be in certain decks, but a lot of times I don't think it's as crucial or as critical as a turn 5 into a turn 6 leader. And with that one, I am going to go ahead and end the video here. We didn't get any like insane games. We didn't get any games that just like blew me away. We will do a live stream with this deck later today. And so if you want to see more of this deck in action, maybe see some of those really high roll games, definitely stop by, check out the stream or the video on demand of the stream later. But what we did run into is a very big array of different matchups and positions that we were able to find a way to push for a win regardless of kind of what we were matching into or what locations or cards we were facing. Because we were able to drop and curve and power out early, if they went with the counter of like a rogue or an enchantress, it just wasn't quite enough to keep tempo as well as steal our abilities. If they did use rogue, then we had Super Skrull to kind of steal them and use them again. And we have a lot of answers to a lot of different scenarios depending on what cards we have and how the game progresses. And I think that's where the strength in this deck lies, is the consistency. There are so many variations and ways to play this deck to find a way to win that it just allows you to be incredibly consistent. And so with that, we are going to go ahead and end the video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to give it a like and a comment down below. And as always, this has been TLSG. Later, guys.